I'm Lloyd with the Food Service Channel powered by the Food Connector. The Food Connector is the premier B2B digital marketing platform for the food industry. My guest today is Jeff Slater. Jeff is the founder and chief listening officer at the Marketing Sage, a marketing consultancy based in North Carolina. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the Food Service Channel.
Hey, Lloyd. Nice to be with you today.
Thanks. I've really been looking forward to speaking with you. Your company, the Marketing Sage, works with the Food Connector on different projects in marketing for the food industry, but your background gives you some different insights. And it's so fascinating because it seems like it's part entrepreneur, part corporate marketing. So can you just kind of give us a brief kind of recap of your background?
Happy to. And you said it exactly right. About half my career has been as an entrepreneur, and half the time has been in the corporate world. And I've learned and benefited from both of those experiences. When I met my wife, she had started a baking business. And after about a year or so, I started to help her with it. And then we built a business together. It's called Rachel's Brownies. She started it around 1975, 76. And we built a business and sold it after about 13 years to a food company who owned bakeries and snack food companies in North Carolina. That company owned brands like the Slim Jim brand and David Sunflower Seeds eventually, and lots of beef jerky products and baked goods and all kinds of interesting things. And over the years, I rose to the ranks of executive vice president of marketing for the whole company. And it was about a $400 million portfolio of brands. And we were very successful in growing it. And around 2000, it was sold to Conagra. And I went to work for Conagra and worked with them for a couple of years, and left around 2004 and started working as a consultant for a few years in various food service and retail, different operations. And then I started with a position in the wine industry with a wine packaging company called Noma Cork. And they closed 1 out of every 8 bottles of wine in the world. So it was a global marketing job. And the last 8 or 9 years, I've been working as a fractional CMO for companies, a marketing consultant, a brand strategist. And I've worked with clients from the Wall Street Journal to startup food and beverage companies, just a range of different companies, but mostly focused on strategic marketing.
Got it. When I talk to people, I find everyone is at the effect of marketing, right? I mean, people that don't work in the industry, when you turn on your TV or whatever, you're impacted by marketing. But I don't think people have a good understanding of marketing. And I wanted to ask you what your definition of marketing is.
I like to think of marketing as how you communicate the value of the product or service that you deliver to a very specific audience. And marketing is many things. A lot of people think advertising is marketing. Advertising is a tactic, a subset. And people get confused by it. But at its essence, it's really about how do you tell your story and how do you communicate the value of what it is that you do and how you can help a client or a customer to achieve the goals and objectives that they have. So that's the general way I like to think of marketing. To your point about sales and marketing, though, I love the metaphor of thinking of marketing as planting seeds and sales is harvesting the fruit from those seeds. Now, to me, marketing is a long-term project. It takes investment and time, and particularly patience. You have to feed and nurture and fertilize. But it's true that you ultimately need to work in collaboration with the sales team so that you can pick that fruit. You can harvest the benefit of the investment that you've made.
I just love that analogy. It just makes so much sense to me. And as I said, I've been kind of over on the sales side. And for many times in my career, I think there's been on the sales team maybe a lack of understanding or a misunderstanding of the role of marketing, and almost kind of like a lack of appreciation for it. Like, where are the guys, on the street closing the deals, blah, blah, blah. But when you explain it in the metaphor of a garden where you need to do both, that totally makes sense to me. And I feel like if someone had explained that to me earlier in my career, I think I would have had a much better appreciation for what marketing does.
It's very much like breathing. You have to breathe in and you have to breathe out. It's not
Right.
one or the other. It's really both. And, when I come into an organization, I like to make clear with the various teams, sales or operation or finance or whoever, that I'm there in service to help achieve the goals and objectives of the company. And marketing doesn't have its own objective. A marketing plan or strategy has to roll up to the business, it has to align with the business, the values and the pillars of that business. So that's kind of the way that I think about it all today, is very, strategic in nature, understanding where we're going and how I can help get us there and make sure we're communicating the value proposition of what we do.
Okay, so let's talk about a kind of a subset of that, and that is how can marketing help a company in standing out from its competitors, even when its products or services are kind of somewhat commoditized, right? There's from the standpoint of the consumer, there's not that much difference between the competitor's product and yours. Marketing seems like it could help out with that, but how so?
The lens I always look at is trying to understand the rules of a category and then how to disrupt them and break them, how to do something different that brings value to that audience that you're trying to serve. So I'm always thinking in terms of this idea of what is everybody else doing and how could we do something different that is going to shift where people put their focus. 40 years ago, furniture companies assembled furniture and sold them in stores. And then this crazy company called IKEA said, well, what if we just put them in boxes, lowered the price, and let the consumer assemble it? So now furniture wasn't being assembled and it wasn't being delivered. You had to go to the store and pick it up and put it together yourself. That disrupted the category. That gave people a reason to say, okay, that's different. And then people evaluate, do they get more value out of that? And they were serving a very specific target of the audience.
Okay. And then for some companies, it seems like what they focus on is their product and will kind of, feature and benefit it to death when in fact they actually have a story about the company, what it stands for, what it's about. And that seems like a great role for marketing in cases like that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a wonderful example of this in a little coffee shop in North Carolina, based in Wilmington. They're at the beach. They never talk about their coffee. What they talk about is the fact that they hire developmentally disabled adults to work in their shop. And this business has gone from one store in Wilmington, North Carolina, to having almost 100 franchise stores throughout the country.
Wow.
So they didn't put the emphasis on the product, they put the emphasis on the story of who they are and how they do business. And the same is true for lots of different companies where they emphasize something different. The world doesn't need another bottle of water, a company that sells bottles of water, but there's this company called Liquid Death. And they had this insight that people who go to music events or bars, they don't want to hold a bottle of water in their hands, but they want to look cool and fit in. And so they designed a can to look like a beer, like a craft beer, but it's just bottled water or flavored water. And Liquid Death went in 5 years from zero to, almost a $700 million valuation, by having a big insight. They put the emphasis not on water in a can, but on the design. That's where their emphasis was. So, marketing is often about not just what you add, but what you take away from a category. kind of like the IKEA example. Another example of that is Cirque du Soleil. They took away the animals from the circus and they emphasized something dramatically different. So I'm always looking at brands and products and companies, where they sell, how they sell, what the value is, what the challenges that a consumer has. I mean, think about Uber. I mean, Uber just made it so much easier to go from here to there without having to call a taxi, have cash available, struggle with the credit card. You press a button, car shows up and it takes you where you want to go and you get out. So it's that disruption. And sometimes it's a very small thing, but it's a powerful thing, kind of like the liquid death water or the coffee company.
Yeah, it seems like you say, it's not a huge thing, but at the same time, the liquid death could have just been like any other bottled water company fighting for a slim part of that niche. But instead, they kind of figured out who their customers were. So it seems like what we're talking about now is strategic marketing versus marketing tactics. And if you could talk a little bit about that. And do you find that some companies want help with marketing tactics when they haven't yet nailed down their strategic marketing?
So my title with my business is Chief Listening Officer. And the reason I picked that was because I like to ask questions and then I like to listen to people tell me what they think they need. And very often people I speak with in a consulting role are talking about a tactic like we need to refresh our website. We need a new logo or we need new graphics, where truly there's something deeper that's a challenge for their business. It could be that they need to reposition their product or their service to a different audience. And that understanding of strategy versus tactics always leads me to start by making sure I understand really clearly what is the problem to be solved. Because I don't want to start working on things for people until there's an agreement among me and the client that I get, what's the problem that you're having? They may think the problem is, well, their website is old-fashioned. Okay, well, that may be true, but is that the root cause of the problem they're facing? It may be that they're not getting quality leads that are turning into new business for them. Okay, well, that starts, and then I ask further questions. So it's in these asking of questions that I can uncover what the real deep problem is. And then I can go about putting together a plan that says, well, here are some of the things that we could do, but it's going to be based upon, how much money you're going to invest in your garden to plant some seeds.
Gotcha. So I think that the Food Connector tends to work with a lot of B2B, and your background obviously includes some B2C. Is there much difference between the two, or in some ways, are the problems the same, but just different in application in marketing?
I think the problems are the same. I've worked with distributors and food brokers and wholesalers in lots of different industries. And the same sort of strategic marketing approach for them can apply to consumer goods too. So, for example, when I worked in the wine industry, we were selling corks to wineries all over the world. So we were in a B2B environment. And part of the challenge that we faced in this company was we had relationships with technical people, quality people, but the marketing folks in the wineries would influence what type of closure or cork or screw cap would be used on a wine bottle. And so we created and developed a series of events that was designed to build relationships and community with wine marketing professionals. We started doing that in California twice a year, did that for 4 or 5 years. And then we took it to France and Italy and Germany and Spain. And basically, it was the same idea. How do we build relationships with all of the influencers in the decision-making process? Now, if this was a B2C company, we were selling to consumers, lots of things are different about it, but the core thinking, the strategic part, is the same. What's the problem to be solved? Who is the target that you're trying to reach? What are their choices? And how are you going to differentiate what it is you do from what everybody else does?
That's excellent. Yeah. Um, it amazes me when I think of some of the brands that you managed and the size of the portfolios and also the time. There were some really neat campaigns going on with Slim Jim and some of the other brands. Um, and it seems like you you and your wife developed this bakery. It grows. It's a fantastic success story. And then you get acquired, and now you're working within kind of this corporate structure. How different was that for you at that time?
Now, I always remember that we had about, on the Slim Jim business, which was a pretty big business, we had about 5 different types of agencies that worked with us: an ad agency, an event marketing agency, a PR agency, package design agency. We had other types of agencies too, digital, that eventually came along. And we just were all on the same team trying to figure out, how do we grow this business over time? How do we differentiate ourselves from all the other products? And how do we expand our view of the business? And I always remember an insight that I learned from a consultant who I worked with. His name was Lou Berry. In fact, still in touch with him, and his daughter is a consultant too these days. And Lou was trying to convince me to think beyond, meats, the Slim Jim product or beef jerky, and start thinking of portable protein, because that's what we were selling. And he said, you think of the example of, like at Campbell's, the V8 brand. They were about $100 million brand as a tomato-based product. But then they started thinking of fruit also being a product that could be part of their platform. So V8, the fruit drinks that they came up with, and they expanded how they thought about the market, the addressable market. And by widening their lens, they were able to expand and grow and I think they were a $400 or $500 million business. So, lessons that I learned from people along the way, I'm still using today by thinking, well, what's the category that you're in? And is there a different way of thinking about, are you in the, like Coke used to think of, carbonated soft drink category? And then they started to think about share of thirst. People are thirsty all day long, and they started seeing a bigger portfolio opportunity. And that's, 30 years ago, where they just started to expand to all sorts of other product types. But they were all trying to quench thirst. That was really, the motive for that.
Do you find that that's some of the best value with bringing in a marketing consultancy for a smaller company? Is some of these things I think are hard for founders to work through unless they have someone from outside helping them think through kind of what the positioning is, what the company is for, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit of an outsider is exactly what you just said. They can bring a fresh perspective and other experience, and they are going to say exactly what they think, back it up with data, and share what they see as potential opportunities without a fear of, hurting the feelings of the owner or the founder. Very often I will come in and work with companies, and I'm there challenging the assumptions that they have about their business, because very often they'll say, oh, our product is so superior and everybody buys it because of the quality. And I'll say, well, how do you know that? What's the evidence of that? How do you know that people have a preference? And is that really why they're buying? Or is it because it happens to be available where they're shopping? And what is it that drives it? So, when you come in as an outsider and you ask for, well, how do you know that's true? So oftentimes they say, well, it's an instinct, it's a gut feeling, and that's great, but that's not going to get you from, 50 million to 200 million or 200 million to 800 million. It's going to take insight, it's going to take data, and it's going to take analysis, and it's going to take capital and a plan. And, and that scales according to, the size of the business that you're working with. But, I find outsiders who are really honest and frank bring the most value to companies, because you're hearing something that probably no one else on the team is telling you.
Yeah, I think what I've been told by others is that, a founder or owner will often say, like, no one knows this business like me. And while that's entirely true, there are some things in terms of positioning that they haven't thought through like completely. They have an idea. And in terms of operations or go to market or anything else, what they know is how they do it. They don't really have a vast experience with other companies. And so bringing an outsider in provides real value to them.
Yeah, you have to be careful not to fall in love with your own message and marketing, because you may think, God, this is such a great story. We have such a novel product. And then when you take it out to consumers in a really good piece of research, quantitative or qualitative research, and the consumer comes back and says, it's boring, it's okay, it's nothing special. And the owner said, oh, that can't be true. That's not true. Why would we sell all of this product? Well, the challenge is, well, what if you could do 10 times as much business by making some changes, by rethinking how you position this product? And that's when the iterations and the ideas start to, really, come to bear fruit.
Jeff, this has been really fascinating. I really appreciate your insights. If someone wants to learn more about you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, everything about me is at themarketingsage.com, where my website is, and you can connect with me. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people there. I'm on Twitter. If you go to my website, it has all the different ways to find me. But the Marketing Sage is the best place of all to really come to connect with me. And I love to connect and talk to people and see how I can be helpful to them.
That sounds great. I want to thank you so much for your time, Jeff.
Thank you, Lloyd, for inviting me. Fun to talk.